It was a bond so deep, so unspoken, that even time couldn't erase it. Tanny's life had always been intertwined with the creatures she cared for, but there was one animal who held her heart in a way no other could. His name was Jolta, and he was not just any gorilla. He was the one she raised, the one she loved like a brother. Tanny's connection to Jolta began long before she realized what it truly meant. She was only a little girl when Jolta came into their lives. Her father, Damien, had always been surrounded by animals. He ran an animal sanctuary, a place where injured or orphaned creatures could find refuge and healing. It was a labor of love, and Tanny had inherited her father's passion for animals. But it was Jolta, an orphaned gorilla, who would forever change the course of her life. At just a few months old, Jolta was tiny, fragile, and lost. His family had been killed, and he had been found wandering in the forest. The sanctuary took him in, and Tanny's heart immediately went out to him. She watched as he grew, learned, and discovered the world around him, and she was there every step of the way. As the years went by, Tanny became his constant companion. She fed him, played with him, and spent endless hours teaching him and caring for him. They shared a connection that was beyond words, a bond that grew stronger with each passing day. Jolta wasn't just an animal to her. He was her family. The sanctuary, with its vast array of animals, felt like home, but Jolta's presence made it feel complete. As Tanny grew older, so did Jolta. He became a strong, magnificent gorilla, but he never lost the gentle nature that had always defined him. To Tanny, he was still the little gorilla she had once held in her arms, and the thought of one day letting him go seemed unimaginable. But there was an undeniable truth Tanny had to face. No matter how much she loved Jolta, the time would come when he needed to return to the wild. He wasn't meant to live in captivity. He was meant to be free, to roam the forests, to find his place in the world where he truly belonged. This was something Tanny understood, even though it broke her heart. When the time came, Tanny knew the moment would be bittersweet. She and her family had prepared Jolta and the other gorillas for this moment for months. They had learned how to survive in the wild, how to navigate the challenges that would come with it. But nothing could prepare Tanny for the pain of saying goodbye. The day they transported Jolta to the jungle felt like the end of an era, the end of her childhood. She couldn't help but feel a sense of loss, as though she was sending a part of herself into the wild. The day Jolta left, Tanny clung to the hope that one day, somehow, she would see him again. But the years passed and life moved on. Tanny continued her work at the sanctuary, rescuing and caring for animals. But there was always a part of her that longed for Jolta. She would hear stories about gorillas in the wild, but none of them ever felt quite the same. They were all beautiful in their own right, but Jolta, he was different. He had been part of her world, part of her family. Years turned into a decade, and Tanny's life continued to evolve. She traveled the world working with animal conservationists, but the thought of Jolta never left her heart. Her father, Damien, had kept in touch with the team that had helped release the gorillas into the wild, and every so often they would receive news about Jolta. He had adapted well, becoming part of a gorilla troop, and his survival was a testament to the strength they had instilled in him. But one day, a letter arrived. A letter that would change everything. Her father had received a message from the conservationists in Africa. They had spotted Jolta. He was thriving in the wild, and there were reports that he had even formed his own family. But the most astonishing part of the message was that Jolta had been seen looking toward the area where he had been released, almost as if he were waiting for someone. The letter suggested that perhaps Jolta hadn't forgotten the humans who had raised him, and so Tanny made a decision. She would go to Africa. She had to see him again. She couldn't live another day wondering if their bond had truly faded. The journey was long and filled with uncertainty. Tanya had always known that it would be dangerous. The wild was not a place for humans to tread lightly, especially when it came to powerful creatures like gorillas. But the pull to reconnect with Jalta was too strong. She had to see him with her own eyes to know if their bond still held after all these years. When Tenny and her father arrived in Africa, they were met by a team of guides who would take them to the remote jungle where Jalta had been seen. The journey was treacherous, with thick foliage and dangerous terrain, but Tenny didn't mind. Her heart was set on one thing: finding Jalta. As they made their way deeper into the jungle, the sounds of wildlife surrounded them: chirping birds, rustling leaves, distant roars of wild animals. But Tanny was focused. She kept her eyes peeled, her heart racing with anticipation. And then, as if by fate, they saw them. A group of gorillas emerged from the dense trees. Tanny's breath caught in her throat. Among them, she saw a familiar figure. His massive frame, the way he moved, the intelligence in his eyes, it was unmistakable. It was Jalta. Her heart skipped a beat. Tanny stepped forward, her hands trembling. She called his name softly, almost afraid to believe it. Jalta's eyes locked onto hers. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Time stood still. And then, to Tanny's amazement, Jalta stepped forward. His massive form towered over her, but his gaze was gentle, searching, almost as if he recognized her. Tani couldn't help herself. She moved closer, her hands shaking as she reached out. Jalta paused, his eyes narrowing slightly. The guides and her father shouted warnings, but Tani couldn't stop. This moment, this reunion, meant more to her than anything else. When Jalta finally reached her, he touched her arm gently with his massive hand, as if confirming that he remembered her. The guides were stunned. They had never seen anything like this. It was as if Jalta knew her, as though their bond had never truly broken, despite the years, despite the distance. For the next few hours, Tani sat quietly with Jalta. He was a wild gorilla now, part of his troop, and Tani respected that. She didn't try to approach him the way she once did. But in his presence, she felt something powerful, something undeniable. Jalta had remembered her. He hadn't forgotten the love they shared. As the sun began to set, Tani knew it was time to say goodbye. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Jalta was no longer the baby she had raised. He was a wild, independent creature, and it was his time to live as he should. Tani gave him one last look, her heart heavy, but filled with gratitude. She had found him. Their bond had stood the test of time, and she knew that no matter where life took her, a part of her would always belong to Jalta. Before leaving, Tani turned to her father and whispered, "This is what it means to love, truly love, to let go, but to know in your heart they're always with you." As they left the jungle, Tani's heart was full. The reunion wasn't just about seeing Jalta again. It was about realizing that love, no matter how improbable, could endure. And though their paths would now diverge, the bond they shared was timeless. It was a love that no amount of distance or time could ever erase. If this story touched your heart, imagine how many other incredible animals like Jalta are out there waiting for a chance to be saved. Share this story and join the movement to protect wildlife. Every voice, every act of kindness can make a difference. Subscribe now to stay updated on more incredible animal stories and how you can help create a world where love and compassion for all creatures thrive.